Globalization and technology are the two most important factors that are really redefining the world we live in. And when I say the world, I'm not just talking about the world of tech. Thank you all. I guess this is an amazing event, and again, I give so much credit to John and the team in OurCrowd who are making the Israeli tech truly accessible to so many people around the world. So thank you for having us. What I would like to do in the next 30 minutes is really to try and give you a global perspective on innovation. The title is Israel Innovation, but I am trying to put it in the perspective of the global innovation map. We live in a nervous, dynamic world that is moving very quickly in a very global fashion. We just saw China has a virus. The whole world is under containment right now and under a tremendous scare. So everything that happens anywhere in the world has a huge impact on every us. So one word about Viola. Viola is the largest tech investment group in Israel. We actually manage $3 billion. 1.3 is the early stage side. We invest across all stages, early stage venture, fintech, growth, as well as venture lending. But I really want to talk about the global innovation scene. So globalization and technology are the two most important factors that are really redefining the world we live in. And when I say the world, I'm not just talking about the world of tech. Globalization has been an amazing phenomenon, and I'll try and give you kind of a perspective on it. But what I really want to focus is on a technology transformation. In 2007, social, mobile, and cloud technologies were introduced and have created a true disruption in the scene of innovation, has created a very new digital consumer life, and I will try to talk about it. They've also created a $1 trillion venture investments since 2007 in that amazing ecosystem. The result is that we have been part of an explosive global innovation ecosystem, but we also are seeing a very amazing but also worrying factor where the tech giants, the Facebook, the Amazon, the Google of the world, are becoming so dominant and so self-reliant that they have a huge impact on the global innovation ecosystem, and I'll try and talk about it. We are seeing a very interesting phenomenon people don't talk about. Actually, the number of startups in the world is declining for the last 4 to 5 years. In Israel alone, we are seeing about 50% decline in the last 5 years. The amount of money does not go down, actually the amount of money goes up. So we are seeing a very fundamental shift, and in a way, startups are really being redefined. We are now at the beginning of a new innovation age. Artificial intelligence, I believe, is at the core of this new age of machines that will redefine everything and every industry and every aspect of our life. Whereas the last innovation cycle that we are now living through really focused on consumer, the new innovation will actually, era will actually deal with everything else. I think Israel is an amazing, vibrant tech with a massive creation of unicorns. I'll try and give you a perspective on what is happening in Israel. Over $2 billion are invested in Israel in AI, and I'll talk more about that. And I do want to talk to you about a new term that you're not used to here, which is called decacorns, $10 billion, which I believe will become the new gold standard that we should all aspire to. But let's start with this dynamic, nervous global world. The world has been really redefined by both the globalization and the technology transformation. So let's talk about globalization. In the early 90s, something dramatic happened in the world. China opened up, Asia opened up, global trade has peaked dramatically, the Iron Curtain fell down, the Soviet Union ceases to exist, and the result was that we have now become a really, truly global village. And we can see it very well in this corona crisis, where every industry, every consumer is impacted by what's happening in China, in Vietnam, in everywhere else in the world. We have become a global village. The result of that have been phenomenal. We've seen economic boom, and if you don't read the news, but you actually read the economic data, this is the best economic times humankind has ever experienced, by far. We are seeing growth in global trade, tremendous productivity. One of the most amazing phenomena, and I'm a technologist, but I'm also an economist, There hasn't been in history so much money printed and so much liquidity in the financial markets. According to all economical theory that anybody who studied economy would tell you, we were expecting to see huge inflation. But the inflation doesn't happen. More and more money flows, huge liquidity, low interest rate, negative interest rate, yet no inflation. And the reason for that, for me, is that immense productivity, which is the result of those two phenomena, globalization and technology. So we've also seen some challenges. The labor market pressures. When manufacturing is moving to China and to Asia, the lower echelon of the US Midwest, the British rural areas, and many other parts of the world, especially the developed world, are suffering, and we have a huge adjustment to go through in the global labor market. Inequality is expanding. In the developed world, inequality is at all-time high. There's a lot of geopolitical tension now. We'll talk about US and China, and we're seeing global warming. But I do want to focus on technology. So it all started with cellular and internet back in the 80s, 90s, and 2000. But for me, really, the world has been redefined in 2007. In 2007, many things happened. I want to focus on three things. Facebook came out of university and have created a social paradigm that not only changed everything we know about social life, it changed education, it changed psychology, it changed every aspect of our life. The iPhone came out in 2007 and redefined mobile as the main platform for managing our lives. Just think about the fact that until 2007, if we wanted to surf the internet or access anything, it was all about going to the computer. Now everything is with us. It is a huge paradigm shift. And then Amazon came with AWS in 2007 and has created a paradigm by which computing and storage resources are available at an amazing granularity. So if I need 1,000 servers for 4 minutes, I can just buy them from Amazon. This has, as I mentioned, this has changed not only the technology world, it had huge impact on the human behavior. And let me talk to you about a couple of examples. So recent study in the US showed that 82% of the words we are saying every day, we are actually not saying them, but we are writing them. 82%. It used to be 30%. Now 82% of the words. The most amazing thing about it, 60% of the words we say are addressed to more than one recipient. We don't talk with people anymore. We talk to people. That's a huge fundamental shift in human behavior. Think about the fact that 40% of couples in the US now are meeting online and not through any other social contact. So the change in those platforms since 2007 have changed humankind. And actually, I believe that every social science that we know, education, psychology, sociology, political science, look at the way politics have changed. Everything in our life has to be rethought about, and all those social sciences that were created in the 19th century are not really relevant. But let me go back to what happened in the business of innovation. So what we saw is that the big tech giants who have created amazing platforms, people like Google and Facebook and Apple and then later joined by some of the Chinese, and I'll talk about it, have created an amazing platform. But they approached innovation in a very different way. If until 2007, and those of you who remember, everybody used to talk about solutions. Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, IBM, they would all come and provide you a full solution. What Google, Facebook, and Amazon and Apple said is, no, we're not going to give you a solution. We're going to give you a platform. It will have the best technology. We will give you the consumer access, but we will also give you the business model, internet advertising, app stores. They've created this amazing business model and monetization and created this amazing innovative ecosystem. This has created $1 trillion, really, $1 trillion of venture capital investment since 2007 in this amazing ecosystem, about half of it in the US, and has created giants like Airbnb, Netflix, AOL, and actually changed every aspect of our consumer life. It started with an amazing wealth of consumer products. Within 1 year after the introduction of iPhone, there was 1 million products in the Apple Store. The most amazing thing people don't realize about it is that 80% of those products were developed by companies with 20 people or less. That was a huge shift in the innovation ecosystem, because until 2007, any company with 20 people or less had no chance in the world to have access to the world. So we have seen an amazing democratization of innovation and a creative power that was unleashed and truly changed the world. But very quickly, those amazing amount of products was just not enough. And business models have started to shift. And what we have seen, and what we are seeing very clearly, and I believe it's one of the most defining business trends of our times, is the move from selling products to using products. People don't want to buy products, people want to use products. When you think about companies like Uber or Lyft or Netflix or Airbnb and PayPal, all those companies that you're using, they are tech companies, but they are redefining what tech companies is all about. What they are really providing is a technology-enabled consumer service. The consumers have become very particular about what they are looking for. What they want is frictionless interaction. Don't tell me I need to talk to somebody, I need to wait in line, I have to wait for a technician between 10 and 2 in 3 days from now. I want an immediate gratification. If I wait to Uber more than 2 minutes or 7 minutes, I go to Lyft. So people are looking, and the consumers of today's world, and I must say this is not just a young people generation issue, this is also true for us as consumers. We lose patience. We want an immediate gratification. And, for me, privacy is overrated. And actually, when I go to Uber in New York and it suggests the hotel that I usually stay in, I actually like that. People do look for personalization. People want to have a personalized, very effective, highly efficient consumer service. This is a huge change in the way we approach innovation. The other very important factor was China. China has truly leapfrogged the US. And I don't know how many of you know the digital consumer life in China. They are much more advanced than the US. The best story is when I was actually walking in the streets of Beijing, I saw a beggar, and the beggar had a barcode. And people would go, and with their iPhone, they would give him a donation of $1 and walk on. I don't see that in New York, believe me. So this amazing amount of products, WeChat is probably the best consumer product in the world. This has created a huge global race for technology, and I actually think one of the biggest dilemmas we have in the innovation industry is we are now seeing 2 innovation stacks that are developing in parallel, a China one and a US one, and it has also created tremendous amount of backlash. China has had some very controversial practices when it came to IP and protection. The US, for commercial reason and business reason, and not just political reasons, got very concerned about China becoming so dominant. And that war, and if you look at the 5G war, is probably redefining the innovation ecosystem. We in Israel have always the dilemma: do we want to be the arms dealer of this race? Do we pick a side? Obviously, US is a core part of our ecosystem, and we cannot avoid that. But do we really want to give up on China? Huge dilemma for us. But all this amazing $1 trillion investment and this tremendous tsunami of technology has created an amazing, what I call, global age of consumer. And we're living through that dream right now. So on the basis of those amazing platforms, both the Chinese and the US, with companies like Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, and others, we are seeing a wealth of services, consumer services. People don't talk anymore about apps and products. People are talking more about services. However, I do want to talk about the tech giants. The tech giants have become very dominant. One of the interesting things that is very much has a huge impact on our industry is the fact that they have learned to innovate. We used to think about startup and technology disruption is because the big giants, the automotive company, IBM at the time, Microsoft at the time, they couldn't innovate. Cisco at the time. But believe me, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple are some of the most innovative organizations in the world. So for the first time in the history, we are seeing giants that can actually innovate. They are also attracting top talent. Amazon comes to Israel. They're just moving the Alexa AI development to Israel. They're paying salaries that nobody can really afford. They're paying huge stock grants. This is a huge challenge for the entire innovation. They're also creating their own tech stack. I don't know if you know, but today Google, Facebook, and Amazon are some of the largest semiconductor manufacturers. They produce their own software. And then the other amazing thing is they do control a lot of the market access, and they've become very controversial in applying it, as can be attested by the antitrust investigation and fines on them. I think what they're also doing is they're dominating the horizontal. And when we, at the early stage, we're looking at that, we're saying, okay, are you really want to compete with AI infrastructure with Google? I don't think so. Not with about 2,000 AI engineers in one campus in Google. The other thing there is they have huge amount of cash. Well over $1 trillion of cash just among the tech giants, but they only spend 3.5. So they're not buying. Not only are they innovating on their own, they're also not buying startups. Very few huge exits have happened with those tech giants. So definitely this has a huge impact on the way we look at the innovation. But in general, startups are, as we know them today, are being redefined. We're talking about companies that are not selling tech, but they need to develop and offer a complete service based on technology. Execution becomes a major issue. This is no longer about a couple of nerds coming from Stanford or from 8200 developing this amazing cyber technology and building a unicorn. That doesn't work anymore. This is yesterday's news. I think it requires a much broader team. We need experience in marketing, in sales, in data science, in finance, in operation. We are not looking anymore for only that technology excellence. This is not enough. And it does require a larger upfront investment. The result is what I've talked about before. We are seeing declining information of new companies, not only in Israel, but also in the US, also in Europe, also in China, also in India. Across the world, we are seeing smaller amount of startups, although each of the startups requires much bigger capital, and I believe represent bigger opportunity. So I think actually the hit ratio in early stage will be improving. I think that the upfront investment will be bigger, the teams will be more diversified, and those companies will have to actually build real businesses. But everything I talked about is looking in the back mirror. And as a technology, hopefully, entrepreneur and visionary, I don't like that. I like to look forward. And let's look at the entire world and not just focus on what already happened. Most of the industries are still lagging. Let's take a couple of examples. Ford Model T, the car on the left-hand side, 100 years ago, in today's term, cost $25,000, was driving at 14 miles a gallon at 40 miles an hour. The car on the bottom is Ford F-150, the most sold car in the US last year. It cost $25,000, drives at 16 miles a gallon at 60 miles an hour, 100 years later. 100 years. This is the innovation of the automotive industry. Not very impressive. Yes, it has air condition, it has great seats and airbag. That's not innovation. It takes us the same time to fly from New York to Israel that it took us 70 years ago. So in 70 years, except the failed experience with the Concorde, nobody was able to really innovate the jet engine was invented in the 50s. Even the medical, which is a frightening thought. If you take the 20 top-selling drugs in the US, the newest one is 25 years old. There hasn't been a new antibiotic. So what's going on? What is going on is that if you want to have an innovation about ordering food from a restaurant, that's easy. You can write programs, and for those of you who have some technology, you basically can do if, then, else, and prepare the computer to do something which is, okay, if they say hamburger, this is what you do. However, if I want to write a software that drives autonomous cars, I cannot do it with if, then, else. This is a much more complex problem. I have billions of data points, and the logic is very complex. There is no algorithm in the world that can just say, if that, then do that. You can't write that. So most of the problems I talked about, automotive, aerospace, pharmaceutical, actually the entire world, 90% of the world economy, is not about digital consumer life. It is about physical industries. And they need massive data and much more complex nonlinear logic. Actually, I will show you one graph which I think is very interesting. Everybody is familiar with the Moore law, which showed the power of computing. This is the dotted black line. Actually, we are behind that because the physics are coming to an end, and in a way, we are coming to the end of the ability to innovate. However, if you look on the right-hand side, which is the complexity of the problems that the technology needs to solve, and the computing complexity and the amount of data is exponential. So we need breakthrough, and that breakthrough is AI. AI, for me, is really changing the whole innovation stack, the dawn of the new era, and we are now in the 2007 of the social, mobile, and cloud. What really AI is dealing with is not only dealing with massive amount, unlimited amount of self-defining data, so the end of database, welcome big data, but also dealing with nonlinear logic, which means rather than saying if then else, the AI technology can absorb huge amounts of data and make their own conclusion. The change is huge. It is changing the way computing. We need quantum computing. We need biological computing. We need dedicated chips that will think differently. We need software platforms. I don't want to go into all of that, but the whole innovation stack, this will look like a very new innovation stack in the next decade. This is what will define innovation in the decade to come. The important thing, it will have huge impacts on industries like retail and agriculture and health and everything that we as early-stage venture capitalists, we used to be very focused on IT and on consumer. Now we are investing in construction, agriculture, healthcare, and many others. Major global impact, productivity gain, disruption, huge accelerating challenge in the labor force. We are now moving into an era of white-collar automation, massive automation, where accountants, lawyers, call centers, and many other jobs will be replaced by automation. This will be a crisis and an opportunity. People will need to reskill themselves throughout their lifetime. Education needs to change. People have to become long-life learners in order to be competitive. But let me quickly talk about Israel. So Israel has been in the forefront of that technology. You all know that the numbers, 8.2 billion in tech ecosystem. The Israeli entrepreneurs have been very agile and knew how to move over the years from traditional software and telecom, 8200 related to ad tech, to consumer, and now they're massively moving into AI. This is a map of all the Israeli startups that are dealing with AI. Over $2 billion were invested last year in AI startups. Israel is now really almost second to none. Even Silicon Valley, I would say that, is at par with Israel when it comes to innovation around AI, and this will redefine the innovation ecosystem in Israel at the time to come. But obviously the biggest story in Israel is the unicorns. We have seen, and when I started Viola 20 years ago, I started to talk about building unicorns. I'm happy to say it took a bit of time, but it is happening now, and we are at a record-breaking year in unicorn formation. Actually, we are now counting 26 Israeli unicorns. And again, unlike the West Coast or WeWork or other things, these are real companies. I'm a board member in a company called IronSource. It's not yet 10 years old, just turned 10. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars in EBITDA. So these are not bogus valuation. These are real companies with billions of dollars in revenues. The amazing thing, which is very notable, is that because of the digital distribution, many of those companies are actually managed out of Israel, and which is a very new thing. We used to think about innovation as Israeli entrepreneurs build a technology and then move to the US and build a business. Not anymore. At least half of the Israeli unicorns are actually doing a lot of the business out of Israel because of the digital distribution. We saw that in huge amount of mega transaction. You heard our friends from the PE industry. We are really seeing, only this year, 7 major private equity firms have opened now offices in Israel, only in the last 12 months. But I'm an entrepreneur, so for me it's all about what's next. And I believe what's next is we need to build beyond unicorns. This is the Israeli unicorn map. Look how many unicorns were created in the last 3 years. But actually, there are only 3 decacorns in Israel, and as Mobileye is now part of Intel, there are really only 2. Only Checkpoint and NICE are worth $10 billion. The challenge for us is, let's dominate AI, let's help make a better world, and let's build great decacorn. Thank you very much.